Welcome everyone to the Tiny Tom Logan review of the ROG Z11. So, ROG's new ITX case. Now, throughout this video, I've done things a little bit differently because it's an ITX case and I can't review it how I normally would do. So, there is in the moment a 3080 reference card in there, sorry, a Founders Edition, but you will end up seeing a Strix 3080 in there as well. I also did the build with the highest end ITX board that I could get my hands on, although I know it's technically not ITX, but you get my idea. So I went with the Impact, and that might come in handy later on when we get 5000 series processors, and that was my thought process, because this might stay built for a little while. Pings in the background. So, fairly in-depth review. You're going to see me with it empty to start off with as well, because there's quite a lot for me to do and I couldn't actually show you all of it with it fully built, because once it's all in there, it's actually quite a compact little case. But the airflow can be okay. So go and get your tea and biscuits, get yourself comfy. It's time for a TTL case review. So normally at this stage of the video, I would have it built. But where the case is quite compact and there's an awful lot for me to go through with you guys, I thought I would show you some bits with the case open before we make a start on showing you it with hardware inside. So bear with me and we will get there. So first things first, it can go vertically or it can sit horizontally as well. And when I have it horizontally, it does give me access to the bottom and the roof panels, which do come off. And if I zoom you in, basically at the top of the roof panel here, you can see this bit that sticks out. Now there's a button that side and a button that side. Very simple, but you pinch those in and then that allows you to remove the roof panel, which does have some fine mesh inside to act like a dust filter, and it goes right the way down the sides as well, but you can see what I mean. And just for a close-up here, you can see the buttons that I mean. And then what that does is that does expose the 240mm ROG fans that are mounted in the roof. There are mounts there for 120mm fans as well, so you could take those out and put an AIO up there if you wish. Now getting the panel back in, there we go. And that's it, that's that panel back on. Same on the bottom, although on the bottom there are little rubber feet, and they are quite little as well if you are going to stand it upright. Pinch the two buttons again, like I showed you before, and then pinch the two buttons like I showed you before. Sometimes I have to give mine a little bit of a wiggle to get it out, but then off it comes. And again, there is dust filtering in the bottom. I can actually show you how the switching works. Looks a bit like pinchers on a scorpion or a crab. Anyway, and there is actually an inlay in the panel as well, which is really nice, because the frame is plastic, but that inlay is brushed aluminium. It's the same with the roof, and I forgot to tell you. Also, there is a 140mm intake fan in the bottom, sucking in the bottom, blowing up like a chimney effect. And what I will tell you now as well is you can also, when we get inside, there's a mounting panel here for this 140mm fan so that you can mount a 120mm radiator to it. Now that might sound confusing, but it's like a little shroud that sits over the top and allows you to use the fan that's already in there to fit the radiator. I will show you when we're in there, but it's our first glimpse of it. Now, when it's stood back up again, you do get glass all down this side. This is where the GPU will be. Glass all down this side as well. Now, to remove these panels, what you do actually have to do is take the top panel off, and there is a couple of screws. It's quite simple. Top panel off, and then there's a screw for the doors on each side. So I'm just going to buzz these off quick. Now with the case turned back up, the way to take the panels off is get a hand on top, get hold of it, and it literally just pulls off. There's a little bit of lever in there. It's not a pressed fit per se, but you don't want to just grab it and pull the case over with you. And then you literally just wiggle the door panel up and then out, because there are little key locks in the bottom of the doors, which I will drag you in and show you. There you go. You can see the little key locks in the bottom of the doors, and then on the bottom of the doors themselves you can see that we have these little like ball pins. There we go, floating around. You have those little ball pins. Now they fit in the larger side in there, and then when they slide down, that's where they push in and locate. Do like this new tripod. Anyway, the top panel, you can see it has a covered section at the top. That's where this plain section is, so you wouldn't be able to see through with the glass anyway, but this is a lovely area for you to have your AIO if you wanted to hide it out the way. But you can see fairly tinted glass, and with a black case that's going to make a difference as well. You get tinted tempered glass on the front as well. And then on the back, literally same thing, and that's it, the side panel's off. The more I do it, the better I'm getting at it. One thing I will say about this back panel is this is a machined sheet of aluminium. You can see the ROG logo, you can see it's brushed, you can see all this machine in here. It's probably one of the most intricate aluminium doors I've seen on a case, all different levels. There's no dust filtering on this side. You can see it just is machined right the way through. But where the vents for it is, there are mesh panels on the inside of the case. So a beautiful back door. And you can, like I said, you can see the mesh down the side. All of these cables here, I will just pull out of the way. So the distribution panel. We have a USB 2 in here, which you need to connect to the motherboard, and then you get another two USB 2s here. One of them you do need to use for the front panel over there, and then you've got a spare one, so you could connect that to a power supply or an AIO or something like that. You do get 4 free fan headers, so you've got 3 along the bottom and this one at the top. You do get an addressable RGB connector up here as well, which will be handy for those of you that are planning on running extra RGB stuff. Now this is powered by a SATA connector, which is here, and actually no, I do apologise. Where has it gone? I had hold of it just a minute ago. There we go. So It's powered by a SATA connector, and it does have a PWM header on it as well. And the PWM header you plug into the motherboard itself, and then that's pretty much the hub for this. So whatever the motherboard tells this PWM to do, these will all match. So that's kind of handy, especially where it's an ITX case and you don't get a lot of headers. This gives you a lot more of them, more RGB, and a spare USB 2 as well. So that's kind of nice there. So you just need to remember that. You can also see round the back that there is a fair bit of cable management. Now the power supply sits in the bottom, right in the bottom there, and it's in front of the 140mm fan. So power supply sits in here. There's a couple of cable management tabs up here, but I think you are going to end up with a fair bit bunched into this because it's short. Now, when it does come to the power supply, it goes in the back. Now, to get the back panel off, there is actually a screw on the inside at the top that you need to undo and not just grab it and pull it off like I tried to when I first got it. So you undo the screw and then you can remove the entire back panel. There we go, removed. Ta-da! I know you were zoomed right in. You have the cutout down the bottom for the power supply. Don't forget, with some people, they're going to be running it face down, so there are little feet on the back, so it lifts it off of the floor. The mesh panel around the back here actually comes off because the main part of this rear panel or bottom panel is actually another big chunk of machined aluminium. I'm being quite surprised how much of this case actually is aluminium. Now, power supply in the bottom, the way you fit it is you undo these 4 screws and then you take that off, fit this bit to your power supply, and then you put it back in. Unless you want to run an SFX power supply, then it does actually come with an SFX bracket as well. So they've thought of that too. Which is really nice, and you also get a couple of mounts in the back of the case for 120mm fans. This mount that's in here at the moment is a mount for a 3.5-inch hard drive or 2.5-inch hard drives, and is easily removed. It's just a couple of screws. There is also a mount just up here for you to mount a 2.5-inch hard drive hidden in the top. I'll zoom you in so you can get a better look. 2.5-inch at the top, then you get the 120mm mounts there, and you can also see that extra mount that I told you about, which is this one, which is easily removable, 4 screws, lovely bubbly. Now, this is something else that I actually really liked. If we look in the bottom, you can see this panel. Now this lights up, this ROG eye lights up, and it's part of the RGB side of the case. Now, because you can put it either way, if you were to want to run your case this way round, the eye would be the wrong way round. And they thought of that and they sent an extra panel. All you have to do is pick that panel off, stick that panel in place, and there you go, you've got it, it's all sorted. Now, one thing I have done is, in case you're wondering why the back panel is now a little bit loose, it's because we've technically removed the mount for it on with the rear panel. So that's it, put it back up, not trap any cables underneath, but yes, the rear panel clips into that, so as we would have fit this back on, it'll all push back in. It actually, the amount of aluminium actually gives the case a fair bit of weight. So with the thickness of the aluminium and the glass, it's actually gone quite a way into making it feel heavier and therefore higher quality. There is a mount there, the little ROG mount. It kind of covers up a cable tidy on this side. And there are cutouts on it on the back and on the front if you wanted to poke little cables through, but you can put a 2.5-inch hard drive there if you wanted. ROG do some handy RGB bits that go into a 2.5-inch mount, so you could end up mounting that there. In case you are wondering, before I start building it, the motherboard sits here because it's an ITX case, and then the graphics card sits at an angle right the way here. The graphics card gets fed with air from that 140mm fan in the bottom. That's also the fan that I said to you that if you wanted, you could use that as a shroud to go over the top of it and fit 120mm fan. It does mean though that you have to remove these screws, and this extra plate is removable, and that removable plate is slightly easier seen from this side. If you're not going to fit the 120mm fan, I would leave it in there though, because it's going to give you a nice place for your cables to sit and rest on without the possibility of it falling in the fan. Also, it acts like a plate to help direct the airflow up to the very important graphics card, which for the first time ever that I've personally seen is actually going to be right in the very front of your case. Now, I do need to get this built now, and we'll have another look around it when we do get built. But the only thing that we can have a look at while we are here at the front of the case now is the I/O. And so you've got your power switch, your reset switch, a couple of USB 3.1s, a couple of USB 3. Normal USB 2s rather, integrated headphone and microphone. Then you've got a USB Type-C, and this is actually a tiny little vent. And this whole section down the front of the case is actually, again, a massive piece of machined aluminium. And this ROG logo here is RGB as well. There's so many little details to this. That is why I needed to show you this before I fill it up with hardware, and we'd cover half of it up. Okay, everyone, so the completed build. Now I need to take the side panels back off of it again, and I do need to show you some up close stuff with the front of the case. So I'm going to start there. Or actually, I do need to take the sides off. So we're going to do that. You can see it has been built. We have a full system in. Something that I do want to draw attention to straight away though, other than my glass of whiskey, is a bit of a bulge on the side panel. It has been a testing day, and I do need to spend some more time trying to get the cables tidier so that the door sits on better. But you know how we take the panels off, so I'm just going to do it really quickly. Okay, so first things first that I noticed is you build your system and then you put both the side panels on and you put it on your desk, and then you have to take the side panel off again because you need to be able to poke the cables through, which come through the back of the case there. So you have to take the door panel off so that you can put your USB cables in the top of your motherboard and your display cables in for the graphics card, which means that if you end up with a nest of wires like this, you then have to lean the PC over with all the cables in to put the door back on again. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to show you the door bulging out the sides. Something else that I did notice though was if you do have all your cables and stuff here, an AIO in the roof is pretty much not going to happen unless you get yourself some 90-degree adapters for pretty much everything. So the best thing I can say to you is don't use an AIO in the roof at all, and it will make your life so much easier with cables in the top. And to be honest with you, I think if you add another 30mm of stuff in there, you would really, really struggle to get anything in, especially a display cable. So that's a handy tip for you right there and then. Other things to talk about are around the other side. I'm going to zoom you in on the graphics card. Now, we've got an RTX 3080 in the front of this, and it is the Strix. It's the big one, it's the 2.9 slot one, so we'll say triple slot. Asus technically did say to me, probably shouldn't fit. And I do have to admit, it was incredibly, incredibly tight to get it in there. But it's kind of a worst case scenario on this one because I am running the X570 Impact in there. And what that does mean is there is an enormous MOSFET heatsink right on the top of the board. So just up here, if I move the cables out the way, you can see that the graphics card and the I/O heatsink, MOSFET heatsink right on the back of the board, they're actually touching. They are incredibly tight. Now that wouldn't normally be there with any one of the other boards and the bulk of other ITX motherboards that you can buy. So it would make life a little bit easier to get it in. And it was the end of that and then the top of the case over here that was making life a bit difficult. But I did manage to squeeze it in. And I say managed to squeeze it in because it is in there, but it was almost at the point of needing a bit of lubrication. But it looks pretty. It does. It looks amazing. You can't really see the RGB down the side, and it does basically prove my point about what I said, that with the Strix it needed more light on the front, and especially in this case. But when it came to cooling, I turned all of the case fans on 100%, and just running Unigine, the graphics card was getting incredibly hot. Talking about way up in the 80s, it was just starved for air. There's just not enough room around the ventilation system. So it's on that 11-degree mount, and this end isn't that far away from the window. I wouldn't be able to get my fingers in there too much. The other end does sit a little bit further away, but that and the fact if you look at the bottom you can see where the cables are, it just got a little bit too restricted and there's just not enough airflow there. So I would say something like the Tough 3080 would probably be okay. I can't test it, I have reviewed it, but it's already gone back, so I can't do anything with it. So that should be okay. A normal 2080 Ti Strix, that was also okay in there. It was in the high 70s. But the 3080, where it is that bit bigger, even with the case fans turned up and the GPU fans turned up, it just was not getting enough airflow. So it's at this point, with the lovely B-roll, I'll say that I did fit the Founders Edition 3080 inside. Now, when I did my original test with this in the normal GPU test rig case, we were getting temperatures around the 72 degrees mark. In the Z11, those temperatures rose to 76. Now that's not a big rise, and considering the way that the airflow is aligned and you've pretty much got that single fan blowing over it, I actually didn't think that was too bad. But the most important thing with this is what it does prove is that the 3080 Strix was just that little bit too big for the case, and it was sitting too close to the front window. So if you are going to be looking at purchasing this case, I would keep your GPU sizes to a dual slot only. I wouldn't risk going over anything else because you might run into some cooling problems unless you're going to be brave enough to be looking at GPUs with built-in AIOs, or even, if you're crazy, full water-cooled loops. The other thing I would say is, in reality, like round the back, I would genuinely say that this is a case that you need to take your time with. You need to spend more time than I did. And I was basically, because I was trying to get the AIO running, because I've got a RIO AIO in here, which meant I had all extra cables to fire around the back and all extra things to kind of plug in, move around. And then I did have a few problems with wiring, so I was trying to get things sorted out. So I would say this is genuinely a case to take your time with. You might need to buy some extension cables, you might need to buy some adapters, but take your time with it and it will reward you with a tidy build in the end. When we look on the other side at the layout and everything, it does hide the hardware quite well. And like I said, the back does look messy, but for an ITX case, with that much hardware, and we've got a 240mm AIO in the back, a 3080 in the front, I think it has done a fairly good job. It swallowed it all up. You can see all the fans and everything in the back. Okay then, so it's a late one. I think it's, what is it, Scott? About 10?
Yeah,
Okay, so it's like 10 o'clock at night now. Spent a long day messing with this, changing hardware, trying to get things all set up and working nicely. I've no idea why the fans are surging because it was on silent mode when I took it off the desk. It must be because it's not connected to a monitor or something. But anyway, first things first. I waited and put the 3080 Strix in there because I thought it was going to be this amazing looking, like super powerful system. And in reality, I wouldn't suggest that you did this at home. It's just not enough room for it in the front. Tough or any of the normal 2-slot cards will be fine. I have tested the just over 2-slot Strix 2080 Ti, and that was okay in there. It was about 4 or 5 degrees above what I would have expected it in a fully open ATX case. So in that respect, I don't think that's too much of a problem. I will say that you do need to be careful with the ITX boards that you use because, like I said, with the impact that I use, got the big heatsink at the top, and that's going to restrict graphics card entry, especially if you get a big fat one like this. And I would also not advise putting an AIO in the roof. When it comes to the design and stuff though, I personally actually really like it. All ITX cases are limiting. All ITX cases kind of have a space negative side to them, and the only negative space size to this case is the fact that you can't put an AIO in the roof, and you could have done with another 4 or 5 mil extra width, so you had extra space for cables on the back of the case. But other than that, I really like it. It's swallowed the kit really nicely. You do have to spend your time getting the cables right, but you know, with a tiny case, you do have to put them get them careful. You do have options with Cable Mod, for example. They do ITX, or you can order shorter cables. I'm going to say Corsair and an SFX case, SFX power supply, sorry, and they do much shorter cables, but I will say they will be too short, especially for things like the graphics card. And it's all going to depend where the EPS 8 pin on your motherboard goes on the motherboard as well. Because in reality, if you think about the size of this case and the fact there are ITX, there isn't actually too much going on in here. And my problems were with the actual motherboard case cables in this kind of part, rather than the big bunch of cables that are down near the actual power supply itself. So there's one for you as well. I would personally, it's only really going to be the accessory cables that I would say that you may want a little bit shorter, and the 24 pin maybe 100 mil shorter, just so that you've got a little bit less going on there. But I wouldn't go horrifically short with a full-blown SFX kit. Other than that, love the aluminium. Definitely great build quality, and I love the fact that you can have your graphics card in the front. If you've bought a graphics card recently that's got the lights on it, or you really want to show it off, maybe you've done a custom build or something like that, then this is definitely going to be an epic case to do it. Just going to have to get your hardware chosen correctly. If you go AM4 like I have, you can obviously get the impact, or there are like the normal Strix versions that you can get hold of, like the X570i, or even the B550i would be a good shout. And we also know that we've got new Zen processors coming, which are going to have a heck of a clock speed going on them, which could be epic for some of the newer graphics cards. Maybe even something like the new 3070 that comes out at the end of the month. But they would make an awesome gaming rig, and obviously with this, it doesn't have a massive footprint on the desk, but it takes up the height. But if you wanted to go the opposite way and put it underneath or something, you can just flip it the other way around. It is expensive. It's £240 expensive, so it's ATX expensive. But in the grand scheme of things, you're getting something that's very different and comes, and like I said, it just shows you that graphics card off lovely. So it's taken a completely different spin on the way that we've been used to having to show off our hardware in the past. And the only real downside to it is the wasted room above the motherboard up here, where you've just got those fans and you can't really do anything else with it. So probably a quarter of the height is there just to hide your cables at the top. Other than that, I have to say I really like it. It is a shame that there isn't that little bit more room at the front for the 3080. But I first saw this case at CES at the start of the year, so that's 10 months ago. And maybe they didn't realise that we were going to have triple slot cards that were going to take this much room. But if it was that little bit deeper, I think that 3080 would have been fine in the front, airflow wise. It's just a little bit too starved there at the moment. I'm going to keep it built because I actually want to do some more work with this going forward. You think you might end up seeing the new 5000 series processors in it, but it's because I actually want to try and get a TUF back now so that I can put a TUF 3080 in the front just so that we can do some more temperature testing with it. So it's not very often that I get a case that I like, but I like because I actually want to do some more work with it. So only real negatives are that space at the top and the fact it's difficult to get cables on the side unless you're incredibly careful with it. But I love the design, I love the way it looks, I love the fact that you've got all of the tie-in with the lighting, with the ecosystem and everything like that. So it's a cracking case from Asus, and it's a very brave case from Asus as well, because like I said, that front mounted GPU, you're either going to love it or you hate it, and I'm sorry, I absolutely love it. So this is the tiniest one with another review for you. Out. Bing. Love you, sis. Outtakes number 2. It has been a long day messing with this thing, and I've had Scott here. Say hello, Scott.
Hello.
And not sure how, just buggered the tripod up.